remarks that I need to provide to you. One is just to explain very briefly that the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. And I think the most common, as most people know, are the consents and minor variances. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be your chair for the evening. And joining me this evening is also my fellow panel members, Mr. Scott Hindle, Ms. Julia Markovich, Mr. Colin White, and Ms. Kathleen Willis. And from staff, from committee staff, we have a lot of support during these meetings. And so I'd like to just acknowledge that we have the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Michel Belmar, with us this evening, along with our coordinator, who is going to be helping us out, Ms. Emily Minette. So thank you. Other than that, you should know also that obviously the session is being video conferenced. It's being live streamed on YouTube. You can access both the agenda and this live stream on the city's archives on the city's website. So it's all there if you want to get it and go back to it if you think you might have missed something or need to step away for a little while. In any event, so as you know, there are a number of issues that affect development within the city, and the Committee of Adjustments mandate is in fact quite narrow. We can't, for example, and I'm going to give you a list in terms of the things that we cannot consider. And first off is any aspects of a proposal that isn't specifically part of an application. We are really only charged and mandated to deal with the components of the application that are before us. So that's what we will focus our discussions on. We also can't entertain anything to do with property maintenance issues or property values or prosecution for illegal construction. We'll also not entertain any personal comments from about either the agent, the applicant, a neighbor. So none of that, please. Also, we can't entertain or discuss any additional variances. So what happens sometimes is during the course of discussion, we discover that in fact, either greater relief from a zoning standard is required, or sometimes an additional variance altogether. If that happens, we need to adjourn the hearing on that application and then to put it off until the next meeting that we can get that item back on the agenda, because it will need to be recirculated. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements under the Planning Act, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and to provide us with a statutory declaration confirming that the sign has been posted. So that declaration has to be as part of the record for hearing the application. So we can either accept them signed and in writing, obviously, and we don't have any of those this evening. So we're going to do a sworn oath sworn oath or declaration. Sorry about that. An oath or solemn declaration. So that's how we'll proceed with those items this evening. If for whatever reason we lose quorum for technology reasons, is the only thing I can really think of, and we can't reestablish it. So we'll, in those cases, we'll pause, we'll give everyone a chance to try to reconnect. And if we're not able to reestablish quorum, whatever applications are left on the agenda will simply be postponed to the very next meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. So you've seen the agenda. It was posted on the screen for those of you who may have tuned in a little bit earlier. We don't have a very large agenda this evening at all. So we're going to essentially go in the order of the applications that we have. So how we normally operate is we may sometimes fast track an application or ask for a presentation. Once the committee has had a chance to get the information that they're looking for, they can ask additional questions. The intent being that the panel members clarify for themselves what the application is all about. Once we have completed that, we will go to a public portion of the hearing. And at that point, we will give anyone who has an interest in the application, and we do have a couple of speakers, I think, lined up for this evening, a chance to provide their comments or their views to the panel. Anyone who has an interest can, in fact, raise their hand and join the conversation. So if you haven't had a chance to register to speak this evening, there's no worry about that at all. You still have the opportunity to address the committee if that's what you would like to do. So then the committee will take time to maybe ask the speakers some questions if they need further clarification or not, as appropriate. And once we've heard from everyone and we've had a chance to finalize discussions around some of the issues that have been raised, then we will close the public portion of the hearing, and then the committee gets to deliberate. And once we've concluded our deliberations, we make a decision. So the committee essentially can either, in terms of decisions, approve, obviously grant the application. We can refuse the application, and we can also adjourn the application, which if we find there's information that's missing in order to make a judicious decision, then we can actually recommend or try to postpone, adjourn that item to a later meeting to allow for the collection of that information. The committee can also reserve on an application, and what that means is that we simply want more time to consider all of the evidence that has been presented to us, and then to move on to make a decision before we actually close our business today. So that's essentially the process. For those of you who do want to approach or speak to the committee, if you haven't had a chance to already put in a speaker's form or speaker's request, I would ask you to provide us with your full name and with your municipal address at the outset of your comments. So once the committee's made a decision, all decisions of the committee, well, first off, they're sent within 10 days of the hearing. You'll get a formal written decision if you would like that, outlining the panel's reasoning on the matter. And then after that, the decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which time the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. So with that, I think we're ready to get underway. I need to ask first if there's any panel any member present this evening that has a conflict of interest with either any of the items on our agenda today or on any of the other panels. Is there anyone with a conflict of interest? I don't see any, for the record. So no conflict of interest. I don't believe we have any minutes to approve this evening. So I think we can essentially move on to the next portion, which is to deal with the adjournment requests. And we do have one, and it is for application number 1 at this point, and that is for 2191 Deschines Street. And the agent is Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, are you with us? Mr. Webster? All right, so I'm going to ask the coordinator whether or not she sees Mr. Webster, or I see there's a Miss Nancy Heapy has raised her hand. Sorry, are you going to speak for Mr. Webster on this application?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Mr. Webster is the one with the phone number.
Okay, so Mr. Webster, can you hear us? Okay. Mr. Webster, can you hear us?
His mic isn't working. This is Danny Ibrahim.
Okay.
I'm the owner of 2191 Deschines.
All right, so how about we speak with you then?
Yeah, sure.
About this adjournment request.
Sure.
So Mr. Ibrahim, you're aware then that there's a requirement for, I believe it's an additional variance?
So there was a design element to the home. That was the brick on the side wall. They're requesting for a 1.5 5 meters on each side. And we came back with, after the new survey was done, it was 1.42 meters per side. And they're coming out with a request to adjourn so we could be at 1.5 meters because of a brick overhang on each side of the home, which is 3 inches on each side.
All right. Ms. Ramirez, did you want to add to that for clarification, just so that we understand what the minor variance, just to confirm it, please? Ms. Ramirez, your microphone is,
Through you, Madam Chair, the total interior side yard setback requirement for this property is 3 meters. And the foundation is noted as under construction and is not meeting the zoning bylaw provisions.
all right, so a minor variance.
Hence the
to,
request for an
to be
adjournment so
recognized.
that the
Okay, all right. So Mr. Ibrahim, you are aware then, and you can confirm that we are adjourning the application, and the earliest date I can give you is January 13th.
That'll be great for January 13th. I just have a quick comment to make. I do have a sale pending on the property on Deschamps, which is closing approximately December 15th on the purchase and sale agreement. I know that we have to get an adjournment, and I'll fully be happy to do the minor variance application and to swiftly do it as soon as possible for that 3 inches per side. Is there any way that we could actually grant at least a severance in order to proceed with the minor variance? That would be my request if that's possible.
All right, I would suggest that normally we wouldn't proceed in that way. We wouldn't allow a severance until we were sure that the severance was in fact in conformity with the zoning bylaw.
Ms. Ramirez could say that everything else was on point except for the side wall setback, side yard setbacks.
All right, Mr. White, I see you have a comment.
Yes, Madam Chair, just along those lines of the possibly a conditional approval, perhaps the Secretary Treasurer could answer my question. Is that a possibility for us to consider? In other words, approve the consent with the conditions as that have been requested by staff, and with an additional condition, final approval of the minor variance application to deal with that the setback problem, the separation problem, or sorry, the combined side yard issue. Is that a possibility? Would we have that option from a technical perspective?
Madam Chair, it might be procedurally feasible to proceed in that manner. However, as you know, we usually want to tie both applications, the consent and any required minor variances, to be approved at the same time. Perhaps Ms. Ramirez could highlight if she sees any concerns with respect to this precise application and given the nature of the single minor variance requested.
So the lot will not be created until all the conditions are cleared of the provisional consent. So even if you had the minor variance as a condition of the provisional consent, the lot would stay until that minor variance was sought. So I'm not sure that it would necessarily give the ability to transfer the lot any sooner.
That's right. So perhaps the
Actually,
applicant would like
that's
to
quite
seek some
true.
legal advice on the issue. And I think what we've usually seen is that closing dates can be postponed, or maybe in this case, and I don't want to give any legal advice whatsoever, but a condition relating to the agreement of purchase and sale. But again, I would strongly advise the applicant to seek legal advice as to what would be the best approach to enable them to proceed with a closing perhaps at a later date. Because
So
as Ms. Ramirez says, what we are granting is provisional consent. And then there is a 1-year period to have those conditions cleared.
all right, so that's exactly, Mr. Belmar, I agree with you completely. I think that the most compelling thing I've heard so far is from Ms. Ramirez. It says that at the end of the day, what's to be gained is really not much at all. So because we do tend to want to deal with these things together, because it just makes sense to do that, I guess I'm of the opinion at this point that we should just adjourn the entire, the 2 applications, and wait till the minor variance catches up, and, or sorry, the 1 application. And
Madam
then,
Chair.
sorry, Mr. Abraham, I just want to gauge the other
Sure.
panel members' position on this first. So I guess I'm looking for those that would be in favor of just adjourning the application.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Is there any possibility of getting it on an earlier date before January 13th, or are we out of meetings because of Christmas and some such?
We have a packed agenda for the 9th, and I'm not sure, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Belmar, can you tell us whether or not we would even have time to circulate at this point?
It would be extremely difficult. I mean, the mail out for recirculation is, I believe, on Monday. And so, we would have to be able to have the minor variance application in to the Committee of Adjustment by Friday with the minor variance fee. We've done this on an exceptional basis in the past, but there have been issues in the past to try to meet that mail out deadline. So my recommendation is that the earliest possible date would be, in fact, January 13th.
Madam Chair,
Okay, thank you.
Madam
So,
Chair, I have
so
my
Mr.
lawyer.
Abraham, just want to make sure I've heard from all my panel members, and then I'll go back to you, I promise. So anyone else have any comments that they want to make on this from the panel?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. White.
my thinking is just that if there was any way that the applicant could begin the process of dealing with the conditions that would be imposed on the consent, and I'm thinking of the the list of conditions that the staff has provided. There's a number of things that are going to have to take place in order for him to be able to get his certificate of consent. And I'm just wondering if there's any way we could either through a conditional approval or otherwise just send the applicant off to deal with staff on satisfying those conditions before we deal with the matter.
All right. Well, that's certainly, it's certainly an option. I guess that's what we're debating right now. Anyone else before I go to Mr. Abraham? Okay, Mr. Abraham, you wanted to make another comment?
Yeah, thank you. During the COVID period, it was very difficult to even have a surveyor come into the property or even review the property just because of all the provisions that were happening during the pandemic. Even with construction phases and construction completion on the property. That being said, the project was delayed for about a 4 to 5 month period. As being a businessman and a designer, I love the architecture of the house. I didn't get any opposition towards not severing the lot whatsoever from any of that ward. And everybody loves the architecture of that property, and it was designed by a very prominent architect in Ottawa. And for the application for the minor variance, I have 2 lawyers that are on it, and I could have that application in by Friday. Nancy Heaphy is one of the lawyers. We also have another lawyer from Mann Lawyers, and I have another lawyer, Scott Parmaville from Bell Baker as well that could actually take care of everything by Friday. All those conditions that Mr. White was speaking about, I could have all those conditions in a matter of 2 weeks with the building inspector, with the water, with everything that Ms. Ramirez indicated on the application before she initiated an adjournment for the minor variance. So to this committee, I am saying, and I'm telling you, I do have a purchase and sale agreement that it's hindering and hinging on today's meeting to be accepted for this minor variance. I understand the minor variance. It's hindering on this application to be approved for a severance for the sale to go through, actually, because that's the condition that I have with the lawyer department right now.
Okay, so thank you for that. So the first thing I think I need to make a call for then from the committee is, and actually before I go there, I do need to ask whether there's anyone in the public who would like to speak to this adjournment request either for or against. Not seeing anybody else come forward. Okay, so just want to make sure that for the record that we've offered that opportunity. So on the question of adjournment, and I think at this point, I think adjourning to January 13th is the date that I'm going to propose first. So all those in favor of adjourning to January 13th, show of hands, please. All right, and I'm on that too. All right.
I'm going to dissent on the adjournment.
Okay, that's fine. How about you, Ms. Markovich?
Sorry, just to clarify, Madam Chair, we don't have the option to adjourn to the December hearing. If I understood correctly, the applicant could make that submission by Friday. Is that off the table or?
Well, it's not off the table. It's just that it does put staff in a tremendously difficult position, given how many applications are coming forward. And so it was, in my mind, it's unfortunate this time of year. Typically we would have another meeting in December. We're not there. It's just happens to be at that time of year. I can make a call. So those who are favorites, I think we're hearing that we're in favor of adjourning, essentially, except for Mr. White would be dissenting on that. Mr. White, would you be dissenting on an adjournment to December 9th? Oh, sorry, Mr. White, we can't hear you.
Madam Chair, I'm clear, the December 16th would be the earliest that we could deal with the minor variance application and the consent together.
Yes, December 9th.
Sorry, December 9th?
Yes.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
All right.
My preference would be that we deal with the consent tonight conditional on the minor variance being finally approved. But if December 9th is available, I would support that.
Madam Chair? I can't hear anything.
Can everyone hear me?
Her microphone has gone quiet. I can hear it, but it's quiet.
Madam Chair, I seem to be having some connections. I'm sorry. Was there a question addressed to me?
No, we're just waiting for Ms. Willis. She has a comment she'd like to make.
I would really like to try to help the applicant here, but I just wanted to explore a little bit more this idea of Mr. White's, and I don't really see how it could work because we can't guarantee that a variance will be approved. The committee might approve it. It might get appealed. You never know. So I don't see how the severance and the transfer could, because the house is under construction. If the variance is then turned down for whatever reason or appealed, then the sale won't go through because they couldn't get an occupancy permit. So I don't see how that's
Ms.
an
Willis, I
option
have an
to make it
occupancy
a.
permit.
Mr. Abraham, I think please just let people, I'll come back to you. If you put up your hand, that would be helpful as well. I'd like to let Ms. Willis finish her comments.
So if there was a way, I did put up my hand about adjourning. I misunderstood that the December was still on the table because I think we do have to adjourn to make it work. I also don't want to put staff at any under any duress because I know it's a very busy agenda. But if there was a way to do it on December 9th, given that I do believe the variance has to be approved as part of the severance application, or the whole thing could become a big mess. So I said January 13th, but if there was a way to make it December 9th, I would be supportive of that.
All right, so I think that's what I'm hearing. I think everyone would be in support of a December 9th adjournment. So if that's the case, just show of hands, please, for the adjournment. Thank you. So Mr. Ibrahim, your application for minor variance needs to be in by Friday. And I mean a complete application. So you've got quite a few things that you're going to need to deliver for that.
Okay.
I would suggest that you get in touch with committee staff tomorrow morning and make sure that you're clear on exactly what needs to be in by Friday, because that means that they really need to get things circulated.
Thank you very much. Can I make one comment? Ms. Willis, the construction of the property is 100% complete, and I do have an occupancy permit on the property.
So that's fine. Thank you very much. We'll see you back in about 3 weeks' time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. We have application number 2. That is for 21 Sunnycrest, and I'm looking for Ms. Daoud.
Hi.
Hi, Ms. Daoud. So I don't have a stat deck from you, so I'm going to need to read one into the record. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first to the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and finally that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the committee, and I've got some housekeeping things that I need to correct with you. My understanding is that we have a plan number under the legal description, that it's part of lot 12, registered plan 310509. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm just double checking that number, but yes, that's correct. Yes.
All right, so
yes.
The committee's had a chance to go through this application in detail. Does anyone on the panel have questions for Ms. Daoud? Mr. White.
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions with respect to the, I guess it's with respect to the zoning bylaw provision on yard front. My understanding that there's the application in item C is to permit permit a parking space in the front yard, which is not currently permitted. I'm a bit confused by the provisions of the bylaw, and perhaps staff might want to jump in as well on this with respect to end note 15 under minimum front yard setback of 6 meters. End note 15 refers back to the old Nepean zoning bylaw, which had which permitted which defined the front yard. A front yard is any yard that abutted the street. So in other words, this would have 2 front yards, one on Marson Street and one on Sunnycrest. The question is, first of all, which parking space is the minor variance being sought for? Secondly, doesn't that parking space enjoy legal non-conforming rights in that it existed and I would suggest it existed prior to any Nepean zoning bylaw being in effect. And then secondly, what are the implications of end note 15 as far as what the yard requirement is for the yard front requirement here? And I'm just a bit confused by all of that. Could perhaps the applicant could help me with, first of all, the question about legal nonconformity of the front yard parking. Which one is it? And then secondly, what are the implications of that end note 15?
Okay, so just Ms. Dow, Mr. White is referring specifically to page 16 of your report.
Yep.
Where he's talking about an end note that you have there that's tagged as 15. So there's three parts to the questions from Mr. White. So if you could start with give us a little history, give us the legal nonconformity that's and at the same time, if you can explain exactly or confirm exactly which parking space we're talking about, then you can maybe talk about the zoning provision.
Sure. So through discussions with Ms. Ramirez, we had agreed that the frontage would be from the Sunnycrest frontage. So this would be the parking space along the Sunnycrest side on the south side of the property was the parking space referring to for the legal non-complying rights to that space. So I did have a chance to review the former city zoning bylaw, City of Nepean zoning bylaw from 2000. And it was not prohibited to have front yard parking in that time at that time. So through discussions with Lucy, we agreed that it would be most simple to regularize that condition under the zoning bylaw as presently is the case. It hasn't changed since the house was built. So that's why we've included it as a variance today. Speaking to end note 15, perhaps Lucy could provide additional clarification on that as well, but I had interpreted the front yard to mean the shortest frontage as is typical, which would be the Sunnycrest frontage.
All right, thank you, Ms. Daly.
Through you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Ramirez.
Through you, Madam Chair. Our current bylaw defines the front lot line as the shortest lot line that abuts the street. And note 15 under the old previous zoning of the City of Nepean gave you the choice on how to define your front lot line. So it could either be the shortest or it could be the one that was a bit longer. And so there is only one lot line, but the old zoning provision let you choose which one you could define as your front lot line versus the corner side lot line.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Mr. White, does that answer your questions?
I'm a little bit, I have some disagreement with respect to the old Nepean bylaw. The Nepean bylaw allowed you to have a yard front setback adjacent to Marson Street or Sunnycrest on a corner lot of 4.5 meters on either and both sides. That was the Nepean zoning bylaw. Now I guess that provision is partially gone. You were one front yard, the old Nepean definition of front yard, which is specifically referred to here, allowed you 4.5, and then the new zoning bylaw has what's called a corner side yard, where the 4.5 is permitted. The other, what I would call in the Nepean bylaw a front yard, is now 6 meters. Is that correct? It's not 4.5 on each, as was permitted by the Nepean zoning bylaw. My problem is that it refers to the definition of front lot line in the Nepean bylaw, but it doesn't apply the setback requirements to both of those sides.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. The front yard requirement is 6 meters and the corner side yard requirement is 4.5.
Okay. I think the bylaw needs some work to clarify that. In any case, with respect, Madam Chair, to the variance that is applied for the front yard parking, I'm not in agreement that that is necessary. I believe that that's a legal non-conforming situation. And being that it's legal non-conforming, I think it would be appropriate, and it would be appropriate for us to not approve that, to allow the legal non-conforming status to continue, because it is legal non-conforming. And the intent of the bylaw is to do away with that front yard parking. My concern is that a neighbor is going to come along at some point, recognize or identify that there was a minor variance granted for something that they may want to do that is not consistent with the intent of the current zoning bylaw. So I'd be inclined to suggest that we allow the legal nonconformity to stand and not approve that aspect of this application.
Okay, so I think one of the, and I would like to hear from the other panel members on that, but what I'm going to propose is, rather than not approve it, that we simply propose that the variance C be deleted, so that if we grant the application, we're granting the applications as amended. So Ms. Willis, yes, I'm looking for your thoughts.
Yes, Madam Chair, I support Mr. White's thoughts, but I would like to hear from the applicant as to whether that causes any real duress. I mean, it was indicated previously that it was the right thing to do to regularize the situation, but in not regularizing it, but allowing it to continue with its legal non-conforming status, does that cause any concern to the applicant?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think my only concern would be whether the application is tied to the plans filed and any issues with that. But my understanding is that the owners would like to just keep that space as is. They don't want to do any additional landscaping in the front yard. So provided that they have the ability to maintain that space as is currently, I don't see any issues with removing it. It was just a recommendation from the city that it would be applied for this legal non-conforming use. So I would follow the direction of committee and the city on that.
Just to follow up, Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, if we did tie it to the plans and the plans show the existing driveway, does that mean if the driveway is removed in the fullness of time that the variance no longer applies? Not for the driveway, but for the entire application. I guess we could
So
tie it to the plans
that's why, to be
insofar as,
honest with you, if we just delete the minor variance and approve the application as amended, then we don't have to worry about it.
true.
Okay. Mr. Handel, Ms. Markovich, any comments? Yes, Mr. Handel.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the applicant, I'm curious, what's the intention of wanting to leave that parking in place when additional parking and additional garage and a widened driveway is being added on the side?
The intent is simply to just avoid having to do additional landscaping in the front yard for maintenance purposes. That parking space is not exactly used. It's more certainly secondary if there was some type of winter condition that wouldn't allow a visitor, for example, to park on the street. But it's simply, honestly, just for the matter of keeping maintenance on the property as low as possible and not adding additional landscaping and going through the extra cost of having to rip up the pavement that's already existing and replace that with landscaping and so forth.
Right. Okay. No, with that in mind, I think I would tend to agree with what's been proposed is to not regularize the front yard parking. I think I agree that it would be better if over the fullness of time, if it did disappear, I'd rather it stay gone and not continue.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go out to the public at this point. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this application? I don't have anybody registered. All right, so I'm seeing no one come forward. So panel, I need your yays and nays on this. So all those in support of the application as amended, and we're amending for the record, the deletion of minor variance C. So we're approving minor variances A and B, and that's it. All in favor? All right, okay, so for the record, Ms. Doe, the vote is unanimous, so the application is granted as amended.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, our next application is 3 and 4 for consent and minor variances at 12 Viewmount. And I'm looking for Ms. Gibson. Hello.
Good evening.
So I don't have a stat deck signed from you, so I'm going to have to read this into the record. All right. So bear with me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first on the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and finally that the sign was clearly visible and legible at all times? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I can affirm that.
All right, great. Okay, so on this application, I just want to see whether or not we have any amendments that we need to make to any of the pieces. No, we don't. So I think we're going to ask for a very brief presentation. Do you have one prepared, Ms. Gibson?
Yes, I did send a PowerPoint.
All right, so let's see that.
Perfect. So this evening we're seeking consent to sever the property into two, and we're also seeking a minor variance to reduce the lot width from 19.5 meters to 15.24 meters. The intent of this proposal is to remove the existing home and build two new single-family dwellings, one on each of the severed parcels. So this area was developed in the 1950s. It's made up primarily of single-family 1- and 2-story homes. Then it's a mature neighborhood with large lots. The houses are traditionally set back. There's, on this particular street, sidewalks on either side. The majority of the homes are front facing with walkways, front porches, 2-car driveways, and garages. In recent years, there's been this change in the neighborhood. I live not far from here. And in the 10 to 12 years that I've been living in Ottawa, I've noticed the change where these large parcels have become subdivided. And new homes are being built, and then also new homes or older homes are being removed and new homes are being built in their place. So this proposal is keeping with the changes that are going on within the neighborhood. Our goal with this new home is to be sympathetic to the surroundings. The home will be 2 stories. We're not seeking the only variance we're seeking is to decrease the lot width, but we are intending to keep within the height and the setbacks. And actually the setbacks that we have for the building exceed what is required. The materials chosen are sympathetic with the materials in the neighborhood. We've chosen a stone facade, but it's totally similar to other homes in the area as far as the brick color goes. Most of the homes are brick and they're kind of a taupe or a gray color. The second story we've set back slightly just to create variation with the plane of the building. So it's not one of those, homes that just kind of front the road. To make it interesting, and then also to make it maybe a little less intrusive on the neighborhood. We also have the second story footprint is slightly smaller than the first story, and I think that's going to be helpful in keeping kind of the tone of the neighborhood. It's going to have less impact on the neighboring homes in the area as far as privacy and access to sunlight's concerned. I know one of the neighbors had mentioned they had concerns with distinctive trees on the property, and there are some beautiful trees on the property. We've had an arborist come in and complete a tree disclosure report, which we've submitted to the city. And there is one tree in particular that's at the rear of the house that the previous owner had planted. And our intention is definitely to protect that tree as well as protect the other trees at the rear of the property. So the only trees that will be impacted are the ones that are directly within the footprint of the new construction. Madam Chair, I can't hear you.
All right. So is that your presentation, or have you more
Yeah,
slides?
so I've included other slides of the site plan, the plans, and the elevations for discussion.
All right. Okay. Questions from the committee on this application? Yeah, Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, I'll just ask, I note from the staff report, and it looks like there's some correspondence on it, but I understand that the concerns, at least related to height, have been dealt with.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I can if I can get confirmation from staff, are there still outstanding concerns related to this application?
Through you, Madam Chair, elevation drawings, clarifying that the height is within the limit when taking into consideration the existing average grade, and they've revised the driveway configuration so there's less hardscaping. Staff no longer have concerns with it being tied to plans, so long as it's being tied to the most recent site plan and elevation drawings submitted to the committee.
Okay, great, thank you.
Clarify, you are recommending that it is tied to the plans as revised. Is that it?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think the department has a preference on if it is tied to plans or not in this case, only that if it is tied to plans at the discretion of the committee, it be tied to the most recent plans to avoid any issues at the building permit stage.
All right, okay, sorry, I misunderstood you there, I think. Okay, other questions to Mr. Wright?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with respect, I would suggest that we not tie this approval to plans. Really, I think all we're really dealing with in terms of the minor variances are the lot width issue. That really doesn't relate to building form and height. That's right. There's no minor variance application for height here. So I would suggest we not tie this approval to the plans that have been submitted. Secondly, just as a comment, as you know, I've had difficulty in the past with minor variance applications in this area for the lot width provisions. It's my view that the zoning bylaw is out of touch with the official plan, and that in most cases the minor variances that we're talking about with respect to lot frontage are not consistent with the general purpose and intent of the bylaws it stands today. However, in this situation, I think there's mitigating circumstances in terms of, firstly, the location of the lot. It's on a local collector road, which, unlike the internal parts of the community, the other internal parts of the community are on streets which are narrower and do not have, for example, the width that accommodates the sidewalks that are on this roadway. So it's a different circumstance there. And in addition, it's the lot areas here are substantially in excess of the zoning bylaw minimum requirements. So I think there's special circumstances here that would give me some comfort in supporting the application as it stands. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Anyone else with either questions or comments about the applications, either the consent or the minor variance? All right. I'm going to go to the public portion of the hearing on this application, or the two applications at this point. I don't have anyone registered. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this application? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised at all, so I think it's time to make a decision, members. So on the consent, all in favor? Okay, so it's unanimous. And on the minor variance application, all in favor? All right. Okay, so for the record, the both applications are granted unanimously. So I think there are a number of conditions. However, Ms. Gibson, if you've had a chance to look through those, no questions, do you understand them?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right.
Chair.
Well then, then we're not tying the approval of the minor variance to the plans. And if there's no more on the conditions, then I think we're good. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
All right, last but not least, we've got applications 5 and 6 for 2079 Lanester Avenue. So I believe the speaker I guess I'm looking for Mr. West. And I see Mr. Chown that you're here as well. All right.
Evening.
Mr. West, good evening. All right, I'm going to need to read through this. We again don't have a declaration in hard copy from you. So, do you solemnly swear, or digital copy, I should say today? Nobody's looking for hard copies, I guess. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first off on the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible at all times? Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
All right, great. On this application, I'm noting that there are a number of housekeeping corrections that we need to make. So I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as I can. The first that I'm noting is that the area reference for B00256, which would be 2079 Lanester, is 333 meters rather than 330 square meters. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I want to make sure we got that right with regards to the consent notice. And on the minor variance, there's a number again. So on B, variance B, we're looking to permit a reduced rear yard setback of 21% of the lot depth of 3.85 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 25% of the lot depth, which in this case is 4.495 rather than 4.4, correct?
Yes.
C, to permit a rear yard area of 21.4 rather than, 21.4% rather than 16 of the lot area, or 64.26 rather than 49 square meters. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. D, we're looking at making exactly the same change that we just made for the consent notice. So reduce lot area of 333 rather than 330, correct?
Yep.
On E, we're looking at a 10% of the lot depth, or 2.22 rather than 1.8 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 25% of the lot depth, which in this case is 4.495 rather than 4.4, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and finally, on F, we're looking at bylaw requires minimum rear yard area of 25% of the lot area, which in this case is 83.25 square meters rather than the 82.5.
Correct.
All right. I think that's all of the housekeeping changes that we need to make. So I'm going to ask you just to do a quick presentation, Mr. West, on both the consent and the minor variance applications, please.
Absolutely. It's my understanding that I submitted a presentation. I see that's being pulled up. Thank you. All right. If I ramble on for too long, please feel free to interrupt me and ask me to hurry up. So the applications you're hearing this evening are for minor variance and severance applications on the property known as 2079 Lanester Avenue. It's marked as the subject property on the figure that's currently in front of you. It's located in the Bay Ward of the City of Ottawa. It's on the north side of Lanester Avenue. It's a corner lot with approximately 633 meters squared, has 18.19 meters of frontage on Lanester and 33.83 meters of frontage on Iroquois. There's an existing detached dwelling. It's on the southern portion of the lot, and a new dwelling is proposed on the northern portion of the lot. So the existing dwelling will retain, and the new dwelling will be constructed on the northern portion of the lot. If I could ask you now to switch to slide number 2, please. Excellent, thank you. So the slide that's in front of you shows the subject property with relation to a number of amenities nearby, such as Carling Avenue, there's Fairlawn Plaza, the Carlingwood Mall, further north Carlingwood Library, D. Roy Kennedy Public School, Kingsmere Park, and Laurie Greenberg Park in the area. So before I begin down the path for the rationale for the severances, I'd like to take a moment to discuss the City of Ottawa growth management strategy. So recommendations on the growth management strategy for the new City of Ottawa official plan were approved by the City Council on May 27th, 2020, in which they adopted a balanced approach to the growth management strategy. And this balanced approach set a target for 51% of new residential growth between 2018 and until 2046. Percentage of growth of new residential units through intensification is targeted to increase from 40% in 2018 to 2021, all the way up to 60% in 2041 to 2046. And as a result, it's expected that Ottawa will grow by 402,000 people by 2046. The number breakdown is approximately 92,100 new residential units will be required to be within the built-up area by 2046. So in order to help the City of Ottawa achieve this balanced growth strategy, intensification is definitely needed. So the intensification of existing established neighborhoods such as this. The subject site is an excellent example for appropriate intensification due to the proximity of transit infrastructure along Carling Avenue, as you can see on the slide in front of you. Along Carling Avenue, there's excellent bus transit services and future LRT services. So I would just like to preface the rationale for the severances with this fact that in order to achieve the 92,100 new residential units in the built-up area, we're going to need to start looking at intensification of appropriate sites. So now I'll speak to the rationale for the severances, and I've asked if you can switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the first severance application is going to create the northerly lot in front of you on the draft reference plan. This will have about 16.69 meters on Iroquois Road and a lot area of approximately 300 square meters. This lot will be occupied by the proposed detached dwelling. And the second severance application will create the southerly lot, identified as part 2 in the draft reference plan in front of you. This will have a frontage of about 17.4 meters on Iroquois, and a lot area of approximately 333 square meters. And on the southerly lot, part 2, the existing 2-story detached dwelling will remain. Okay, so quickly through the rationale, the severance does not necessitate the construction of new public infrastructure, including roads and services. Planned subdivision is not required. The severance has regard for multiple criteria outlined in subsection 5124 of the Planning Act. Proposed lots are within a fully developed neighborhood where hard and soft services are available. The proposed severance is not considered premature in that aspect. The proposed lots result in the detached dwellings are a form of low-rise residential development that is permitted in the general urban area designation and in the R10 zone. Proposed severance will result in 2 lots that will accommodate 2 grant-oriented units where 1 lot and 1 unit exists today. See, the proposed severance will result.
Variances. Mr. West, can I get you to get to the minor variances for us? Sorry to interrupt you. I just
absolutely, I'm fine. Moving on. So as a general statement, the proposed lots satisfy the criteria of section 5124 of the Planning Act, and I'll move on to the variances now. If I could ask you to switch to slide number 4, please. So just to provide a quick more context, the slide that's in front of you is the site plan that's going to be for the house proposed on part 1. And I'll ask you to switch to slide number 5, please. Okay. We've already been through the amended minor variance applications that were recommended by municipal staff, so I'll switch right into the test under the Planning Act. So the first test for minor variance is the general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained. Section 3.6.1 of the Ottawa OP outlines that the city supports infill development and other intensification within the general urban area in a manner that enhances and complements the desirable characteristics and ensures long-term vitality of the many existing communities that make up the city. So the detached dwellings are a form of development that's permitted in the general urban area. And it's an example of intensification of the general urban area that complements the characteristics of the neighborhood. So the second test for a minor variance is that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The subject property is zoned residential first density subzone O, which is R1O under the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw, which restricts the building form to detached dwellings, allows other residential uses to provide housing choices within detached dwellings residential areas, permits ancillary uses to the principal residential use to allow residents to work at home, and regulates development in a manner that's compatible with existing land use patterns so that the detached dwelling residential character of a neighborhood is maintained or enhanced. Okay, so the variances that are in front of you are required to facilitate the development of the detached dwelling, which is a permitted use under the R1 zoning. Both lots meet the performance standards for lot width, front yard setback, interior side yard setback, and the southern building meets the performance standards for corner side yard setback as well. So the requested variances for reduced lot area for the proposed dwelling and the existing dwelling is unperceivable from the street. The proposed building, so the northern one, faces Iroquois Road, and the existing building faces Leominster, which further reduces any potential visual impact. Okay. The intent of the rear yard area and rear yard setbacks provide adequate amenity. The interior side yard setback in the R1O zone is a combined total of 3 meters, with one interior side yard no less than 1.2. The proposed lot for the new dwelling provides an interior side yard of 1.2 meters to the north and 6.25 meters to the south, which is vastly exceeding the 3 meter total setback. So although the southern interior side yard accommodates the driveway, there is still additional amenity area in the southern interior side yard to account for the reduction in the rear yard area. So for the part 2, proposed severance will result in a front yard setback of 7.7 meters from the existing dwelling. The corner side yard setback requirement from an R1O zone is 4.5 meters, and it will result in a corner side yard setback of 8.2 meters for the existing dwelling. The existing house has adequate amenity in the front and the corner side yard to account for reduction in the rear yard space. Okay, so the third test for minor variance is if it's considered desirable for the use of the land. Subject property is within about 300 meters from Carling Avenue, which is identified in the City of Ottawa Official Plan Schedule D as a rapid transit corridor. If I could ask you to switch to slide number 6, please. Excellent, thank you. So the slide in front of you shows the subject property in relation to Carling Avenue on Schedule D of the Ottawa OP. As you can see, there's the relation of the subject property to the planned transit infrastructure along Carling Avenue. So further to that, it's also serviced by the 85, 57, 51 bus routes, as an abundance of bus routes within walking distance, especially along Carling Avenue, and plenty of cycling opportunities along the Ottawa Urban Cycling Network, which is Schedule C of the OP. Okay, so as I discussed earlier, the growth management strategy requires the city to promote intensification to achieve the target of 92,100 new residential units within the built-up area by 2046. And the transit infrastructure near the subject property makes this an excellent location for intensification. Okay. Further to this, I've already discussed the nearby amenities that are located near the subject property. And if I could ask, I would just finish this one off by the variances for lot area promote intensification that's compatible with the existing overall character of the fabric of the neighborhood. If I ask you to switch to slide number 7, please.
Just Mr. West. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to ask you for, some lot fabric evidence. So great.
Yep. So the slide in front of you shows the relation of the subject property to the properties at 875 and 869 Erin. These properties had just undergone severance and minor variance applications and were approved, and they created a lot that was quite similar to the application in front of you. As you can see, it's located just 2 houses to the west of the subject property. Yeah, if I ask you to switch to slide number 8, please. Excellent. So the slide in front of you shows the relation of the subject property to the R1GG zone. As you can see by the red line shows the differentiation between the two zones. And within the R1GG zone, there's a provision, which is provision 9 of section 155 of the zoning bylaw, which allows for the severance of corner lots in the R1GG zone, where the lot area for both the severed and retained lots is a minimum of 49% of the required lot area in the R1 subzone, provided that the detached dwellings that result face different streets. So essentially what this means is if our subject property was located in the R1GG zone, which is quite close to the subject property, the variances we're requesting for lot area would not apply. So the proposed development we have on this corner lot is exactly how the city was looking forward to it when they created the R1, when they created the provision 9, section 155, which unfortunately does not apply to the subject property. We thought it important to demonstrate how close it was. Okay, so further to this, as previously stated, the requested variances for lot area will not impact the view of the severed and retained property from Leominster Avenue and from Iroquois Road. The requested variance for reduction in lot area cannot be perceived from the street. The reduction in the private amenity space in the rear yard is offset by the large front and corner yard of the existing house and offset by the large southern interior side yard on the severed lot. So the minor variances are considered desirable for the use of land. And finally, the fourth test for minor variance, the variances are considered minor in nature. The requested variances for the reduced lot area will not have an impact on the streetscape. Thank you for switching there. As previously stated, each house will face a different street and further reduces any visual impact of densification or any of that nature. As I previously said, with the excess southern interior side yard for the northern lot and the excess corner side yard and front yard setback for the southerly lot that has the existing house on it, there's an abundance of amenity space located in those yards that more than makes up for the reduction in the rear yard setback and rear yard area for the two lots. So in conclusion, the minor variances requested are considered minor in nature, and the applications that are in front of you meet all four tests for minor variances. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. West. That was a very comprehensive presentation. A lot of good evidence was provided to the committee. I am going to open it up to panel members for questions. Anyone? Okay, Mr. Hindle, please.
I was just going to ask in this case, so the intention of reducing the rear yard amenity space as opposed to shifting the house close to the road was to maintain the house's kind of visual impact within the neighborhood to make sure it fit in and didn't kind of stand out as a new infill. Was that kind of the intention?
Excuse me, if I may, Madam Chair. Yeah, the new home has been designed to respect the front yard setbacks, so it's consistent with the balance of the existing homes on Iroquois.
Okay.
Mr. White, I saw your hand up as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any photographic evidence of, and I'm thinking the front yard area of the existing house? I'd sort of like to see what that looks like, because it seems like your rationale is relying significantly on the use of that front yard existing area.
So I believe in our slide deck we do have a street view image of, oh, there you go, the home on Leominster. So it's a open landscaped yard, lots of room in terms of additional amenity space, as Mr. West has indicated in his presentation.
Thank you.
Questions? All right. Ms. Markovich.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In the lotting fabric analysis that you submitted, you seem to isolate the one example. Are there any other examples that you found at all that sort of speak to what you're proposing here today?
If we could put slide 1 up, it may show some additional corner lots. It's typical in the city to encourage corner lot severances. I think it's fair to say that the staff and the planning department have recognized, so if you look just to the east of Kingsmere, you can see on the south side of Leonister, there are a couple of lots between Kingsmere and Hare where the corner lots have been further subdivided. I would venture to say that going to the west, that the property on the south side of Leonister, immediately east of Erin, is another example of a property that has been a corner lot that's been split in half. And as I say, the city staff have recognized that corner lots present an excellent opportunity for what I would call gentle intensification, because you end up with one house facing one street, and instead of having a gap on the side street, you put a house in what was the rear yard to fill that gap on the side street. So it's in terms of streetscape and maintaining the character of the neighborhood, staff have recognized this as being a very suitable and appropriate way of accommodating gentle intensification in these neighborhoods. And that's why that provision has been added to some of the other R1 zones. I think that at the time that was introduced into the zoning bylaw back in 2015, it was to kind of test the water. I think it's proven to be very successful, and I would hope that going forward, the city will actually embed that provision in all of the R1 zones. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to this zone, but yeah, I think there's many examples in this neighborhood where corner lots have been severed.
Sorry, are those examples that you mentioned confirmed examples? You use the language maybe some examples, and I'm also wondering if you could tell us how many meters away from the subject property confirmed examples may be, other than the one on Erin, and also whether they fall within the same zoning designation as the subject property. Thank you.
So I appreciate the question, and I want to be straightforward. So when you look at this image, the one on the southeast corner of Erin and Leonister, we haven't delved into the history of that lot, but in looking at this image, I would be fairly confident that that is exactly the situation that was being proposed here, and the same that was approved by the committee recently on the northeast corner of Leonister and Erin, and it is in the same zone.
So sorry, that's the same example that you showed in your other slide. So in terms of answering my original question, there are no other confirmed
No, this is a
examples?
second example. If we can go to the other slide, I think that zooms in. I want to be clear. It's the example that was included in our submissions and in Mr. West's presentation. If you can keep going to the image. Yes, thank you. So this image was a very recent application on the north side of Leonister. What you can't see in this image is right across the street on the south side of Leonister is another example. So it's in the same block, it's on the opposite side of the street.
Any further questions on Ms. Markovich?
No, thank you.
All right. I do have a question myself, Mr. West. In terms of consultation with the neighborhood, what did you undertake?
I'll let Mr. West answer that question. Thank you.
Absolutely. So our first step was to reach out to the community association. Unfortunately, reached out several times to them, and they didn't provide any comments to us. And I confirmed that I didn't have a dead email address with the Committee of Adjustment. So unfortunately, didn't hear back from them. Our client has actually put up a sign on the subject property next to next to the two signs that were posted to actually show a demonstration of what the proposed building will look like. Our client has also had discussions with some of the neighbors in the vicinity, and I understand that one of the neighbors is here today to speak to this application.
I think, to be clear, Madam Chair, that our client canvassed the neighborhood, not just his immediate neighbors, but he has been in touch with his immediate neighbors, and Mr. Poplawski, who is here this evening, is one of the immediate neighbors that he has spoken to on a couple of occasions.
All right, thank you. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Because otherwise I will go to the public portion of the hearing. So, Mr. White.
Madam Chair, I wonder if we could just get a comment from staff. I noticed in their report, they refer to that severance on Aaron Avenue that was presumably, I don't know if it was our panel that granted that application, but I don't have recollection of it myself. I noticed that they specifically comment on the nature of the lot areas there. If they could just provide us a comment on the comparison between this and the 875 Aaron and the one we're dealing with tonight. Also, I'm wondering if we would have again some photo evidence of that parcel. I'd be interested to see what that one looks like on the ground.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Hodgins, as we're looking for a couple of pieces from you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I did take a look and provide information in the staff report on the information on the severance of the nearby parcel. In my report, I do note that the lot areas on the properties at 869 and 875 Aaron, the properties were severed in 2013 by the Committee of Adjustment, and the lot areas were 366.7 and 395 square meters respectively. And then again, in the rear yard area section of my report, I did discuss the variances received there for the rear yard areas. Outside of that information, I do not see detailed plans other than what was in the decision of approval. I can attempt to answer any further questions the committee may have, but this is most of the information I have available on this severance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hodgins. Then back to you, Mr. West. Any more photographic evidence of maybe some of these other examples, or by any chance a photograph of the sign that was put on the property that demonstrates the what the new building will look like? Any of that?
Unfortunately, I do not have any of those materials directly in front of me. I'd have to reach out to my client for an image of the sign that he posted.
Okay, any other questions from the panel? All right, so we're going to move to the public portion. I do have one speaker that's registered, and I see Mr. Poplawski is here already. So great. Good evening, and welcome to our hearing on this application. So I'm going to give you the floor. There's a 5-minute rule for the most part, but if you need more time, let me know. But I'm going to ask you to make your comments now, please.
Thank you very much. I've hang on, but I'm supposed to press something here.
Back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, so we can hear you now.
Oh, excellent. That's good. That's really important. I guess it's interesting to listen to the conversation about the intensification program, because obviously it's a growing city, that's likely to happen. I will point out there's one group that is not represented here, and that's the wildlife. I mean, there are skunks and squirrels and rabbits who run around on this property, and now they're going to be without a home. But I'll leave it up to them to make further representation to the committee. The issue I have really relates to the physicality of the site. We heard a lot of conversation about the setbacks and so on. One thing that wasn't talked about was the fact that Iroquois Road is quite a bit elevated from the surrounding area. In fact, there's a drop there of about, I would estimate, 3 to 4 feet. And that's going to have an impact on runoff onto my property, which is at 2083 Leominster. And already in the wintertime, when there's snow on the ground and we get a rainstorm, I get water coming into my basement windows. And so just by the virtue of the fact there's going to be another house there is going to deal with that issue. There's also the issue of access to the sewerage. The property is going to be lower than the surrounding sewer line on Iroquois. And I guess that's something that that's going to have to be dealt with. The other issue that you mentioned, property values are not considered. My property already has 9 sets of wires running across it, including hydro to 3 buildings, including my own, a cable from Bell, and also cable from Rogers. And now we're going to add another 3 sets of wires potentially to the new house. So I'm beginning to feel like an animal in a cage when I look up at the sky and see all these wires running across the place. And I just wonder if that's something that should be a consideration. I've already submitted some photos to try and show the issue of the elevation of Iroquois, and that's my major concern. How that's going to affect the runoff of water. In addition to the fact the house is going to add to the collection of water because you're adding a roof and downspouts and such. And I just wonder where, except for my property, that water runoff is going to go. So I guess that's less than 5 minutes, but that's pretty much all I really have to say. The issue of privacy is also one of concern, and that's the fact that I now have another overlook on my property, which is going to have a house facing directly my side yard, which doesn't exist now. But I don't know if anything that's an issue for you to consider or not. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Poplawski. Any questions for our speaker? Okay. The only comment I think I'd like to make, and I'm not sure this is going to be completely satisfactory to you, but as part of the building permit process, one of the things that the city has a duty to look at is the grading and drainage that will result from the development of this house. And of course, the intent is that there can't be any worsening of any circumstances that impact the neighborhood today as a result of this development. So I'm actually hoping, to be perfectly honest, given your comments, that maybe there'll be a way to grade and drain the property, which may in fact be helpful. That may be optimistic on my part, but certainly if somebody's looking at grading and drainage more recently, because I think what happens in a lot of older properties is that over time you get erosion, and the grading and drainage that may have originally been part of the development is no longer exactly as it was. So hopefully this will actually move things back into the right direction. On the sewers, we're going to hope that the city understands where there's going to be requests for connections to the sewers, that whatever engineering requirements need to be essentially undertaken will be as part of that development process. So again, typically not things that we deal with, but I just want to make sure that you have some comfort that there are these mechanisms that will allow it to be addressed. And you can always reach out to the city's planning department to find out more if that's of interest to you. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to give one last chance to anybody for some final comments before before I go there, I do need to ask whether there's anybody else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the application. And I'm not seeing any, and I don't have anybody else on my docket. So committee, or even Mr. Chan or Mr. West, any final comments that you'd like to make?
Madam Chair, if I may, and thank you for the opportunity. I do want to just speak. Firstly, I want to thank you very much for your comments or your response to Mr. Poplawski's questions or concerns with respect to drainage. I obviously wholeheartedly agree with you that through the approval process that our client is going to have to ensure that the drainage situation certainly doesn't get any worse, and it may in fact be improved by being required to direct drainage to the street on Iroquois when the new home is built. And it may be of interest to Mr. Poplawski to also understand that it's a standard condition of this committee when approving a severance application that it would be conditional upon preparing a grading and drainage plan to the satisfaction of the City of Ottawa, so that the new lot cannot be created without first demonstrating that the grading and drainage will work properly and according to the city's regulations. The only other comment I wanted to make quickly is I think our clients actually are quite sympathetic to Mr. Poplawski's predicament with the number of overhead lines that are crisscrossing his rear yard currently. Our client actually reached out to him this evening and to discuss that some of the conversations that we've already had with Hydro Ottawa that may actually improve the situation. Right now, the existing house is serviced by an overhead line that crosses Mr. Poplawski's backyard. It's quite possible that if this project goes forward, that existing overhead line will be removed and replaced by another way to service the existing house. And that existing overhead line is actually the one closest to the rear wall of Mr. Poplawski's house. So there may actually be a benefit to the neighbor if this project goes forward in terms of the removal of at least one and maybe even more of those existing overhead lines.
Glad to hear it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chan. That's always appreciated when we get greater clarity about some of these issues. Okay, well, I think we're at the point now where we need to make a decision. We've got two applications before us. We've got an application for consent and for minor variance. So I'd like to see all of those in favor for the consent application. All right, so we have Mr. Hindle, Mr. White, Ms. Markovich. Okay, you're in support. So for the record, the consent application is unanimously granted. On the minor variance, all those in favor? Okay, again, same situation. We have the minor variance application being granted unanimously by the committee. So I think that's it. There's a number of conditions, as you mentioned, Mr. Chow. Any questions, issues with any of those or
No,
clarification?
We already sought and received clarification from Mr. Hodgins with respect to the trigger for the noise condition, and I thank him for that. And I thank the committee. Thank you very much.
All right, then I think we're done. So short agenda we all get to have a shorter evening. So that's terrific. So thank you everyone for attending. I need a motion to adjourn the hearing. Anyone? Ms. Willis, and seconded by Ms. Markovich. So with that, we are adjourned and there is no other items of business to deal with this evening. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.